right, this is about mapping the values in a basic spherical type object. So I have my basic sphere, and let me kind of create something color-wise here. I'm going to use my sketching pencil here. Well, maybe let's do a little bit of ink here, just so that we can kind of see a little bit of what's going on. We'll do a fine tip pen. Alrighty. And typically we want to kind of decide where, so get some color here going on here. We want to decide where our light source is coming from. So if this is my light source and the illumination of light is happening here, the top portion of our sphere is going to have a little bit of what we call a white reflective highlight. And it's represented by something of an oval area of brightness. So it would be basically your paper color coming through. This section is called your highlight. All right. And it's mostly just, again, like I said, leaving the paper pure white. And it takes on more of an oval-like shape. Notice how the oval is not at the end of the actual sphere or circle that's going to become our sphere. It is set inside of it just a little bit. It's inside that negative space inside the actual circle. So don't put it on the end. And don't do one of these, okay, because this makes it look like a really scary eyeball. All right. The second area starts to get some sense of a graphite value on it, or whatever tool you're working with. I mean, you're barely going to touch it. It's very, very light, and it's going to happen kind of around this area here. Notice I'm making sort of a mark off that's somewhat cylindrical. It's like an oval, okay? This ovular area is basically called the area of light. It's still bright. It's still receiving the benefit of illumination from the actual light source, but it's not pure white. Okay, this is where you're going to start to work with a little bit of maybe your H pencil or a very light blending stump that might have a little bit of dirt on it already, just to kind of move through that area. And as you move it through the area, you need to move it in an oval or circular way. This is not a flat surface, so you don't want to go straight across. It's got to stay moving in a circular fashion. All right, and that's going to fade out here around the dotted line area. And then we get into what's called the shadow area. Okay, as we start to go over the top roundness of the sphere, it's going to start to get a little less bright over here, right? It's not totally dark yet, but it's getting less light. And that's when we're starting to cast and have some sense of shadow occur. So this section in here is considered the shadow. You're going to be working and emerging yourself from this H area up here down into this area with between the HB pencil, okay, and the 2B pencil somewhere near here, okay. So again, you've kind of gone from something in the H to very, very soft blending stump. You're going to move yourself into the HB realm, and then finally merge and blend yourself down to something in the 2B realm, okay? Again, all of this needs to be shaded going in a cyclical oval-like fashion, okay? The next section goes almost all the way down to the bottom. All but this last little sliver arc. All right, this now starts to get into what we call the core shadow. And the core shadow is much deeper and definitely now further away, right, from the light source. It's almost starting to go under our sphere. Down here is where we're going to blend our information from, say, a 2B pencil darkness to a 4B. See? Notice I didn't take it to 6B. We're saving that for later. All right. This little bright area that we left at the bottom, it is considered what we call reflected light. Let's see if I can draw myself a line. This area is reflected light. Okay, what the reflected light is this little glimmer of brightness that's coming from way up here on this side of the sphere. Okay, remember that the sphere is not sitting flat on the ground. It has an arc to it. Okay, and because it doesn't actually sit flat on the ground or on a table surface, that means some light from way up here is going to be seeping from the backside under here. And this little area goes back to a little bit of a brighter value, maybe to an H to an HB value. We see a little bit of that glow of light coming from the other side. And again, this is because it's not sitting flat on the table, because there are no flat parts to a ball, okay? Now, our object itself needs to cast some shadows, right? So let's cast some shadows here. Let me defuzz my brush a little bit here. Let me get up to... Get up a little higher. Okay, so my brush areas, okay, I'm going to end up having a cast shadow on this object, and imagine that it is a big oval, okay? Because a circle doesn't create necessarily a perfect circle shadow. When the light is coming from up here again, light is stretched. The shadow is stretched. And if the light's coming from up here, that means the shadow is happening on the opposite side. And it's creating this oval effect. All right. Notice I'm kind of looking at the center of the sphere here. If I was to divide this circle into half, this is about where I want to start pulling my oval from, okay? About where it starts to touch down and just a little bit further out from there. And it's not going to come up very high into the sphere's working space, all right? Notice it's a very short distance from here to here. Right? So I'm not taking this way up here. That's too big. It's not that big. Okay? We're kind of staying down rather low with our information. All right? Now, the shadow is broken down into different levels of value as well. So we're going to talk about those in terms of our pencil values, just so you can kind of get the intensity of what kind of darkness is going to happen down here. The area closest to the object is where you have your darkest cast shadow. This is going to be using your 6B pencil. And then that pencil is going to fade out. Your hand pressure will change. And in this sort of arced area, we're going to fade to a 4B pencil. And then you'll fade as you start to go this direction into a 2B pencil from there. With me so far? Okay, so the further apart or further away you get from underneath the object, the less dark it's going to be. Because more light is going to be out here in this surrounding area that's going to affect your actual image. All right, so here's a new kind of thought that we're going to kind of think about. So up here on our object, we were working around this direction and this direction to get ourselves the feeling that your sphere was rounded. All shading was going in an arc. On the table is a horizontal surface. right? Here it is. It's horizontal coming out the other side over there. For us to represent something as flat, we have to shade horizontally, left to right or right to left. So even though we have these marked spots that say this is an arced area where we would use our 6B pencil, we still need to use predominantly this motion to create our fill when we go to shade it on the paper or the canvas or the surface. We've got to go horizontally across the objects. Okay, this object here being flat on a table. Then I would go to 4B and I would have to work horizontally as well. Okay, and again, the idea that we've got to fade between this section and this section still exists. Okay, so you have to lessen your hand pressure sort of in this arced pattern. And then we do the same thing out here with our 2B. So everything on the table surface, horizontal, okay, is the call. Otherwise, it's going to feel like it is tilting downhill. Or if you do something with a curve, it's going to feel like there's a hole in the table. Therefore, color outside of this shadow needs to be lighter than 2B. If 2B is the dark shadow, then something out here needs to be less than 2B. Okay, so an HB, an H, any of those are fine, nice light values for out here. They too also going horizontally, okay, back and forth. The wall, okay, the wall can go in two different possible directions, all right. You can either shade up and down, okay. This makes the wall feel a little bit taller, all right, gives it that height. Or you could follow the horizon line and shade horizontally up here as well. It is totally your decision. But any diagonal line is going to make things feel like they're falling. So typically, no diagonals, okay? They are bad. They make things feel distorted. So we're going to avoid the diagonal lines. So you're basically working with horizontals or verticals, right, for any of your shading information. Another thing to consider, as you're playing with the idea of light, okay, and we have our, let me kind of get rid of some of this up here. We know that our illumination is coming from this direction, right? It's coming from up here. So if I were to, let's change to a brush of some kind that I can, or maybe a sketching tool. Let me get into, ooh, soft pastels. That would be nice. Okay, we'll do some soft pastels. Let me choose a flavor to work with up here. All right, and then let me get myself a new layer. We'll kind of go, dun, dun, dun. Come on. All right, we'll work down here. So when we are working in our background, whatever you choose for your background color, it would be wise to have that background color be a little bit lighter on the areas of the object where the light is happening. So I'm kind of looking at going with some lighter values, all right, over on this side. And as I start to get a little bit away from my point of view of the light, I'm maybe going to get just a little bit more medium over here on this side. All right. So see how I'm a little bit, I'm staying light over there, but I'm getting a little bit more medium over here. So lighter. Oops, I can't do that. Sorry about that. I was going to try and write. Isn't that silly? Okay, so you want lighter over on the right, wherever your light bulb is coming from, or your illumination, right? And you want to get a little bit less light. I'm not talking dark, dark, heavy, but I'm just talking a little bit lighter. Okay. Now, another little thing that people kind of tend to forget about. What color is your table? The table color and the shadow go together. So let's say we're working with a tan of some kind, right? Let's say our table, by and large, is a tan color. Let me come up in here, and we've got ourselves some kind of a brown. All right, so here's our brown color. And again, I would kind of go a lot lighter over here where the area is brighter. And then I would get a little less bright over here. And then here's the logic of it. A shadow is cast on this table. So that means here where the shadow is, it will be darker brown. You with me so far? So if I have something casting a shadow over the top of this brown table, it means that these values are going to be now darker than the table color that I've just colored with. Okay, so I have to come in with some darker colors here. So I'm going to slowly kind of work with getting a little bit darker. So I'm going to come in here with my, what I consider a shadow that's going to represent 2B, and then I have a jumbo brush here, so I'm kind of getting that sloppily out of my lines here. And then I'm going to get even darker. Let's make my brush a little smaller. I'm going to get a little darker. All right. Notice how I'm going horizontal, right? And then now I'm going to get even darker still, especially up underneath that guy. All right, that's super dark under there, and then I'm going to let it kind of fade a little bit, still going horizontal, right? And I'm going to kind of let it blend a little bit with the color I have right before it. And the goal is that we kind of don't see a big jump. Of course, I'm doing this super, super fast, sloppy digital. Can you see how this is a little bit lighter, but yet darker than the table? And then this gets a little bit darker, and then that got darker. Okay? But they are all variations of lights and darks of a brown. Okay? In no way does this shadow represent any color that's on our sphere. All right? So if my sphere is orange, my shadow won't be orange. Okay? It's going to reflect whatever color the table might be and darker. All right. So say we were kind of playing with, like I mentioned, the color orange. Okay. So let's take something that's a little bit of a brighter orange up here. And, oh, come on, give me a, there we go. Let me get something more light there. Okay, very quick, very messy, okay? We're going to give ourselves sort of this idea that we've got. Oh, might help if I'm drawing on the right layer here. Here we go. Let me click on that layer. All right, so we're going to start in with a little bit of orange, okay? I'm going around and around. Look at that. Around and around and around, okay? Over and over again, trying to smooth out, okay? So I'm going around in that oval shape, and I typically will go a little bit over the border maybe of where I'm supposed to go for transition, because blending or changing colors or changing your pencils, it's always kind of good to go just a little bit past where you wish you had gone, okay, so that you can overlap. And then we're going to kind of beef it up to the next color, right? Because now we're into the next value. And you're going to kind of keep going with the next value of orange or whatever color you might be working with, or value pencil you might be working with. So I'm going to kind of keep going here. And we're starting to get into that realm of, it's going to start to get a shadow or darker feel to it as we start to go down this. So I'm going to keep going a little bit more down here. Doop, 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 doop. There we go. I'm going to start to get this a little bit. See how I'm getting it a little bit richer here? I'm losing kind of my orange. What happens when you get orange darker is it tends to turn brown. Okay. Now I don't have many vibrant colors here. I know I'm working a little bit more neutral. But again, I'm kind of working in a circular fashion. Okay. And now I have sort of entered into the realm of the dark shadow. All right, see, I'm kind of blending back up into there. Now I'm into my dark zone, and I want to get into something a lot richer. Okay, so now I'm coming down here, and look how I'm kind of staying away from that little sliver, right? Now we're getting into that core shadow. That core is significantly darker, all right? And I'm fading that up into that other area there. And now I need to kind of go backwards. Again, this is all very quick. You would spend more concentrated time kind of working on your information here than I am, obviously. But this kind of comes back down into that little reflected light. And again, I could kind of put more richness of colors in here if I wanted to. But the idea is that, can you see how I'm kind of pulling in from the sides so that you feel the curve of the pencil, the brush, the tool as it curves into the object, okay? So you gotta curve into the object. All right, I do have sort of a brief sample here. Let me hop over and I will show you. So this is your basic idea again of how we want to kind of play with the full white light, the shadow, the core shadow, that little reflected light, and how your darkest cast shadows start really dark underneath your object and begin to fade out. All right, so use this as sort of your resource for how to shade, how to map your spherical object. And this works with any medium. You just have to control the sense of value and which value you're going to go to next as you start to work your way over the curve of the orb.